since I lost all this weight, I can't keep my pants on. So I'm on this journey this morning that you may not want to come, and you may not want to come with me, or only partly come with me.
Richard, this is called a microphone.
Such a nudge. Because, I'm going to encourage us to face reality. To start my journey, I face the fact that to be a human being is to be a hypocrite. Even the best of us, those that are most true to our values, cut corners at times. We tell little white lies. We forget our personal shopping bag at the house and don't run back to get it. We buy something pretty rather than send more money to Doctors Without Borders. We jump in airplanes too often, ignoring the environmental damage. Hypocrisy comes with the human territory. At least it is better than selfish cruelty. But on the more significant level, this is an issue that has driven me crazy for years. Seemingly there is no way of disentangling ourselves from the exploitive, unequal reality that is our world, that is also the source of progress, pleasure, beauty, and sophistication. We are torn between the good life and the good life. We yearn for a better, more just world, but it seems the desire for good living is part of the block that sits right there in the way of a just world. It offers us mindless temptations that just seem normal living in America. As an ethical culture leader and as an individual, I'm embarrassed when, as I search for the origins of social justice, I find myself and my American lifestyle as part of the problem. I find avoidance of the uncomfortable fact of our part, and certainly my part, in the continuing and unjust society around us. The ancient hypocrisy that has been built into human nature allows us to go on living dual lives. I must admit that although I don't have the money and resources of some of you, I'm still a member of the club. I too have a middle-class mindset. I participate in the good living our culture offers. At the same time, I espouse all the good causes. My point is going to be, we should be conscious of that dichotomy and question how we can do better. The reality of our hypocrisy becomes obvious when we speak against white privilege and speak up for economic and social equality. When we say Black Lives Matter and are against global warming, and yet we continue to receive the rewards of living in an exploitive system that creates those problems. We keep putting ice cubes in our drinks as half the world can't find access to clean water. What are we going to do? Most of us here are white. And for us, white privilege is useful. At least for us, it makes life easier. We can sit in Starbucks without fear of interference. We can smile without fear as we pass a cop. We don't have to constantly worry that the color of our skin is a disadvantage in jobs, housing, banking, shopping, and a million other ways. And beyond institutional racism, when it comes to our economic system, forgetting for now the 1 or 10%, we can consider it normal that some average Americans are making a couple $100,000 and others $25,000 if they're lucky. So to trace our hypocrisy, I'm going to try to find connections to some of the areas of our life together that support our hypocrisy, starting with reality, and then moving through religion and politics as worlds of illusion, and ending up with honest living. Starting with reality gets immediately complicated. The question becomes, what reality? Generally, we in ethical humanism claim a commitment to reality, a commitment to materialism, to naturalism. We are not supernaturalists. We don't imagine there is another reality somewhere. When we attempt to make decisions, we find it is not only practical, but useful, morally useful, to depend on the facts. We start with what is real. Everything else in the natural world, as with everything else in the natural world, we are products of our living experience. Our heads are full of assumptions, good or bad prejudices, wishful thinking, that shape our approach to reality. We ought to accept that when we tell people to face reality, we are actually telling them to face our personal reality with all its uniqueness. Reality is actually an evolving experience, not a stable, static state. Around here, we believe global warming is real. I may giggle at the thought of Mar-a-Lago being underwater as our fact-denying president wades to higher ground. But there is nuance on the negative edges of the global warming argument that we should humbly wonder about. And before I move to the connections or effects of religion, I want to offer a heads up on where I'm going. To start, the natural reality isn't very natural. Everyone and everything in nature has been fiddling with natural reality through the millennia, making it better for working for us. Sure, the physical laws of nature are secure, but as with the rest of nature, we play with the laws of nature. Water flows downhill, but beavers redirect streams, and Archimedes' screws moves water uphill. Termites can bring down your house around your ears unless you treat the wood. And we clever human beings put people up in the sky with airplanes, even into space, and thousands, millions of other human beings are being killed by weapons we invented, by theories we invented. In other words, reality is not in reality so real. It is a natural phenomenon, but it is an evolving understanding. It's not pure. Natural reality is actually cultural reality full of ideas and values and laws and illusions and passions and love and hate, all that shape our reality. As I've mentioned before from up here, I have a sociological background. And I'm big on pointing out the effects that capitalist corporate culture has on us. Culture is the invisible air that we breathe, and much of it is foul air. Culture changes our expectations. It rewrites our ideas about what is normal human behavior. It defines and interprets reality for us. We move from horse and buggies to self-driving cars, and we accept it as normal. We move from the progressive, quasi-socialistic politics of the Roosevelt era to the triumph of selfishness and pettiness of the Trump era. And in the process, we didn't notice the slow destruction of our national values by the fake concern for the little people. A destruction that has been in progress for decades because of the effects of the transformation of the Republican Party into the party of lies, distortion of reality, racism, and favoritism for the rich and money classes. We all have seen how meanness and disrespect for others has been legitimized. And now, the slow progress in respect for every person that earlier seemed to have become the expected norm of our society, we can see how it can be destroyed in a few years. One of my favorite but slightly silly examples, examples of how culture changes us, is our eating habits. Suddenly we need avocados and kale and home delivery of dinner by underpaid workers. And of course, smartphones are changing our reality. But in case you haven't noticed, smartphones are another cultural reality that divides the haves and have-nots. Now we have one person standing at the corner waiting for the Uber to show up. And right next to him or her is someone waiting for the crowded, bone-shattering, too often late of the SEPTA bus that smells funny. Where I am going here is to the reality in which we don't own ourselves, because at least half of us is controlled by the consumer culture and the values it disseminates. You know, I know we are sophisticated people who don't watch much television.
I don't know about that.
But try it sometimes. It is full of advertisements. It increases through every year. Your computer is full of ads, email and paper mail. The New York Times, the size of the New York Times, electronic New York Times, down to the size is full of ads. And supposed sacred words are defined and used to sell things. You're going to find love and meaning in a new car, or a new kitchen, or a cold beer. It is not just shopping and having stuff, but the grasping culture touches everything. It is the march of individualism. We are encouraged to care about ourselves, our needs and satisfactions, and not feel ourselves more inclusively as part of community. With our eyes constantly on our cell phones, the cultural messages go unnoticed as natural. As we are told how to dress, how to eat, how to marry and to whom, how to raise our children, and when to move to the suburbs for better schools after city schools are starved of financial support when minorities move in. And then we are encouraged to think it is correct, a correct moral decision to favor your child, to move them to the suburbs for those schools, those better schools, and not worry about all the children in this world. You are an individual in this metaphor. And that has become the national slogan as it allows politicians to divide and conquer us, making our fellow human beings competitors, all in the interest of a few obscenely rich folks who rob us all of our little wealth. It's an example of the old phrase, co-opted. We are absorbed into a culture that we helped to create with our acceptance. We breathe it in, and it is constant on our screens, telling us how to be normal, a normal average American, buying our way to happiness. Even the most caring person comes to be oblivious to how their lifestyle is consuming the resources of the earth. Our values are oriented into approved understanding of ethical positions. Standing up for choice becomes a noble principle of privacy and a woman's right. Forgetting to understand how poverty and violence are behind many women's need for abortion. And as our empathy-lacking president refuses immigrants from Guatemala, he denies the role our military and corporations played in the rape and theft of Guatemala's resources, leaving the people in poverty. Plus, the fact of human-made global warming leading to the desiccation of Guatemala's farmland, starving the people in Guatemala, making immigration to the United States a life and death necessity. And all the while, I grew up with inexpensive bananas from Guatemala. Getting back to my journey of connections, I go to the greatest long-standing illusion of our culture, going back thousands and thousands of years: religion. Even those who reject traditional religion are left with the residual effect of the unreality of religion on human culture. Religion spreads illusion to every corner of human reality. We continue to have a sense that there is some grand meaning to life, ignoring the fact that meaning is what each person gives to life. Religion allows people to escape from responsibility for the effects of their action. They can obey these sacred laws, even when it gives them permission to hate others because they are different. People can park the meaning and purpose of their lives in unexamined packages with weird stories of traditional religion. While many religions do good deeds, the source of so many of our social problems remain in the static, dogmatic approach to living offered by religion. God will handle it. The answer to all problems is to offer thoughts and prayers to the spirit world rather than solving the problems. My third area of unreality is politics. But I probably should say politics and economics, since I think the capitalist worldview is enmeshed into our politics. And it is a dishonest fraud that has taken over our culture. How is it fair and just that a business owner can take the lion's share of the wealth that the workers produced? Who creates the myth? Who created the myth that the supposed courage and creativity of the employer is worth so much more than the creativity and hard work of the worker? Our present political reality is a fraud, an escape from reality. As far as I can tell, we're living in a never-never land in our political reality, and it's not new. It has, with Trump, just come to its natural fruition. Why do we pretend that the Republican Party is a legitimate political party? It's a lobbying tool of the filthy rich. Why does it make sense that we have a political party committed to the interests of the upper classes? A phenomenon that has now arrived at a situation in which 1% of the population takes home more than 51% of the income of the rest of the population. What is a conservative party besides a party supposedly conservative? What is it conserving besides lower taxes for the rich and warmongering that steals money from the people by giving money to the military-industrial complex so that they can make more money? Or is it about conserving economic and social inequality, racial injustice, being against women's rights, gay rights, immigrants' rights, and against the obvious fact of global warming that will finish their job of destroying the natural world? How can that agenda claim to be a legitimate political party? That's nuts. This is also not new. It did not start with our mean-spirited buffoon president. Serving the comfortable part of the country and manipulating the rest with fear and prejudice has been the policy of the Republican Party for at least 100 years, excluding a few bright spots when Republicans did actually offer us people of honest character. So, this is supposedly about honestly facing reality. Part of that for me is facing the fact that behind social issues that we care about, there are deeper culture-wide psychological issues, by which I mean the mindset that allows too many people not to love their neighbor as themselves, not to respect the worth and dignity of every person. It was so easy for Trump to turn his 30-some% of the population to the dark side. And another 20% of our people could actually land up voting for him in the next election. What is missing in the American character that explains that reality? I believe that a culture that includes so much religious and political economic illusion creates people afraid to think for themselves, for thinking outside the safe, stable box of approved American exceptionalism. It is a sham, a red, white, and blue fraud offering people a stable illusion that encourages them not to think for themselves, not to feel connection to other human beings. Honest living means being conscious of the manipulative power of our escapist culture, accepting that we are not free. We must fight for our freedom from this illusional culture. Of course, I think part of our agenda is an ethical society. After we work to help relieve the pain and unfairness of our present social evils, should be presenting the positive, humanistic approach as an honest alternative to otherworldly religion that treats too many of our fellow citizens as children. In what reality do we live, or do we want to live? A lonely, individualistic reality, or a communal, interconnected living process? The human race has been living with fairy tales for thousands of years. We can do better. The other aspect of honestly facing reality is confronting the enormous amount of fictitious hype. Fake truth is offered as legitimate fact. Obvious lies accepted as arguable positions. Why does the media waste its time? Flags everywhere. Every soldier a hero. Voting neutrality between obvious nonsense and well thought out research. The pundits aren't doing us a favor when they get us questioning basic human values in the name of phony neutrality. So, let me end this with, it's all up to you. Well, to me too. While Felix Adler, the founder of ethical culture, said this was his religion, he added, you can make of it what you need. He left the door open for free expression by the rest of us, accepting that living is an ethical experience is sufficient to be part of this movement. You can put your own twist on what that means to you. And we each must find our own way of freeing ourselves from the illusions of our fraud culture.